Hello and welcome to Media Technology Center, OP Jindal University, Raigad. I am Dr. Vikas Kumar, Senior Assistant Professor, School of Management. I am discussing with you all macroeconomics. In this phase, today I am going to discuss the very interesting part, ISLM model, one of the most important model in the macroeconomic analysis. And this course will be helpful for the undergraduate as well as postgraduate as well as PhD student to understand the goods market equilibrium and money market equilibrium. Let's start with this topic. I am using the reference book of Dr. H.L. Ahuja, Macroeconomics, chapter 12. Okay, so what is ISLM curve model? Let's begin with the explanation of this term. IS stands for investment savings, whereas LM stands for liquidity for money. As the name suggests, investment and saving is the part of goods market, whereas liquidity for money is the part of money market. So IS represents the goods market equilibrium, whereas LM represents money market equilibrium. Okay. Now, as J.M. Keynes considered investment to be determined by the rate of interest along with the marginal efficiency of capital and is shown to be independent of the level of national income. As in the Keynesian analysis of macroeconomic, investment is of autonomous in nature. So, autonomous investment, how the autonomous investment by the private players or how the autonomous government expenditure influence the market, influence the overall economy, that is what discussed in this particular topic. Okay, so let's come to the explanation of the graph, and within the explanation of graph I will also discuss what the written in this part. Okay, so here you can see a graph where is IS curve has been derived. Let's see the derivation part. In a panel A of a graph, the planned investment has been depicted on x-axis, whereas rate of interest on y-axis. As we all know, rate of interest and planned investment is inversely related. That is why it is downward sloping curve represented as I, that is investment. If rate of interest is more, investment will be less, and if rate of interest falls to say R1, rate of interest with the decrease, the investment will increase to I1, and further if rate of interest decreases to R2, the investment will increase by I2. That is how this curve can be seen. Now in the panel B, we have the classical aggregate demand and aggregate supply curve. Let's see that. This is OZ curve, or also known as aggregate supply curve, as we already have discussed in the many classes. And this is aggregate demand curve represented as C plus I. Also we can say that is it represents a closed economy. Okay, C plus I, or the other part that we have discussed in national income, C plus I plus G plus X minus 1. All these are the elements of aggregate demand. So in this case, you can see aggregate demand and aggregate supply is equilibrium at point EO. At E0, the goods market is in equilibrium, where aggregate demand and aggregate supply is equal to each other. So what is the total GDP at this point? At this point, the total GDP is Y0. Now consider this. What is this? C plus I0. So I0 is the investment. When there is investment of I0, the rate of interest is how much? The rate of interest is how much? R0. So at R0 rate of investment, at R0 rate of interest, at R0 rate of interest, the total GDP is Y0. So you will get the coordinate A. Similarly, if further rate of interest decreases to R1, investment increases to I1, and this lead to shift in aggregate demand curve from this to this part, and now new AD comprises of C plus I1, and the new equilibrium point of aggregate demand and aggregate supply shift to E1, and you will get the equilibrium output as Y1. So this equilibrium output Y1 is when there is investment of I1, and this investment I1 is when the rate of interest is R1. So this Y1 is at the rate of interest R1. So from this we get the coordinate B. Similarly, when the further rate of interest falls, again investment increases, it leads to increase in aggregate demand curve to upward. Now C plus I2 leads to the new equilibrium point E2, which generates the new GDP Y2, and this Y2 is now at the rate of interest R2, and we have coordinate D. If you add all this coordinate with a straight line, you will get the IS curve. Now, if let's see, so this IS curve, every coordinate of this IS curve is the equilibrium of goods market. Every locus, every loci of this line is the goods market equilibrium. So this IS curve is made up of that. Now, if the elasticity of this investment is less, if this elasticity, so this will be definitely which kind of, if the elasticity is less, this will be something, it will look like something this is, it will be more steeper in nature, and that time the investment, increase in investment will be very less. Due to increase in investment, which is a very less, this shifting in AD will be very less, and the difference between the increase in GDP will be less, and because of this, this curve is also of steeper in nature. Okay. So what we have just discussed is that if the investment is less elastic, or we can say inelastic, so IS curve will be more steeper, and vice versa. If the investment curve is more elastic in nature, the IS curve will be more flatter in nature. Okay. Now the second thing, as we all know, in the analysis of aggregate demand and aggregate supply, we have understood about the change in investment and its effect on the change in GDP. That if investment increases by say this much, our GDP is increasing by this much, delta Y. Now this delta Y having the multiple multiplier impact, this change in income having the multiplier impact, that is 1 upon MPC, already discussed in the investment multiplier chapter. So this delta Y is not equivalent to change in investment, but it is equivalent to the multiple of investment. So if the size of multiplier will be high, this difference, say this aggregate demand curve will be more steeper in nature if the size of multiplier will be high. Okay, and the equilibrium point will something different. So again, what we can conclude, that if multiplier, if there is a higher multiplier, if multiplier is more, the IS curve will be more flatter, and vice versa, if the value of multiplier is less, the IS curve will be more steeper. That is how you can depict this derivation of the IS curve. And the explanation, you can, what just I have discussed, you can read that part is why does IS curve slopes downward, and there are two reasons: the size of multiplier and the elasticity. These are the two reasons behind the steepness and flatterness of IS curve. For this point of time, I am resting this lecture. In next class, I will discuss the LM curve. That's all from my side. Have a nice day. Thank you so much.